Hello everybody and welcome to the Quilter's Apothecary. Today's all-important tutorial is on one of the most important questions we get consistently through all of the years I've been doing that, and that is ditch work. We have a lot of folks that ditch work, number one, intimidates. Number two, I don't know many quilters that purchase a machine and the first thing they want to start with is ditch work. It's just something that typically most beginner quilters try to avoid for a while as they get used to their machine, which is understandable. And frankly, it's suggested that I usually tell people hold off a little bit, get used to your machine for a few months, but eventually you're going to have to do some ditch work, whether it be between the body and border of a quilt, or between blocks, or for piano keys, or for 45-degree crosshatch, or for all of those things that we're going to be using straight rulers for. Now, obviously, there are ways we can use curved rulers for the same thing, but that's a whole nother video, which we'll touch upon later on. But right now, we're going to focus on straight line work, or ditch work, and the tools to do those things. Now, obviously, Quilter's Apothecary carries a bunch of different rulers specifically for ditch work. And so we do get a lot of questions like, well, how come you have so many different rulers? And I always go back to the analogy of Rich, the owner of Quilter's Apothecary, was an electrician for years and years and years. And I would consistently say, how come you have all these tools? And he would have like 50 different screwdrivers and end up taking like 18 of them to a single job. And he would say, when you need the right size for the job, you need the right size to get the job done. And for me anyways, and I know for a lot of you out there that have long arm quilting machines as well as the sit downs, you do this as a business to feed your family or to pay for your art form or whatever it is that you do. And so these are tools of our trade. And when you need the tool of your trade, you need the one that's the right size, because one size frankly does not fit all. It's different things will require different type of tools. For example, our medium Mystical 45 is let me see, that one is a 14-inch straight line, and I'm sorry, this is our small 45. This is 14 inches. We have a medium as well as a long, which is ginormous. Would I use these for ditch work? Not at all. This is not something that I would use for ditch work. I use this for 45-degree crosshatch, just when you need to get a nice long line, and depending on the throat size of your machine, for example, the large one is how many inches is the large one? 24 inches on the large 45. Now, I typically don't use that one. I've used it a few times, but it's not the one that I grab very often. But we do have a lot of people with 30-inch and bigger throat space machines, and they do a lot of 45-degree hatch, and they like to use that long ruler. So again, when I'm going to do 45-degree crosshatch on my machines, I'm typically going to use the small 45, and a little more often than the large 45, I would use the medium 45. So just so you know, but these are not something I would suggest for ditch work. When I do ditch work, I usually tell people, if you're doing basic ditch work, what I like to do is I want a ditch ruler when I open my fingers like this, that's no longer than 3 inches beyond that span. That's just kind of my thing. That's what works best for me. But we want to remember the whole reason that I utilized and came up with this particular handle was for my arthritis, because I have a hard time holding flat rulers. And then, of course, once we got used to them, a lot of people found out that they love the handle and they love the angle, and it's ergonomically correct. So for me, the Ditcher 1 is kind of my perfect go-to. This is the one that I use about 75% of the time. And then I would say there's about 20% of the time that I'll grab my Ditcher 2. Now, Rich came up with this size because he had a lot of requests from people that wanted something just a little bit longer than the Ditcher 1. And they wanted him to add some 45-degree crosshatch marks. Um, so this is the one that he came up with, which I love as well, and I use it, like I said, about 20% of the time when I have a little bit of a longer way to go or a wide border that's going to be doing piano keys so that I don't have to slide the ruler so much with something like this. So that's the other option. Now, this one is our ditcher for around applique, which is kind of a whole different beast. So we're going to move that aside. That has nothing to do with this. And we have a tutorial up for ditching around applique. So check that out if you want to go there. Now, the other one that we have is the mini no notch, which is a very small ditch ruler. And I use this if I'm doing around little squares or some type of specialty work. I like to use this. And sometimes if I'm having a really good eyeball day and I just want to use this, and I will move this right along with me when I'm doing some ditch work. You know, it just, like I said, depends on the day. So, and where your headspace is at that day, because we do a creative endeavor here, and so a lot of it is a lot of us, I would say, over 50% are emotional quilters. It's like, how do I feel today? What do I feel like doing? How do I feel about using the different tools that I have? So, the other ditcher type rulers that we have for folks that don't want to turn the wrist at all, so not just the handle, but these are wonderful. But the thing is, when you're going up sideways, you're doing it this way. When you're going over this way, you're going this way. And so you're constantly turning the ruler, which is fine for most of us. But we do have a small percentage of quilters that actually can't keep turning their wrist based on different physical issues that they have. And so we have the mystical square. And we have three different sizes. We have a small, we have a medium, and we have this 8-inch large. So again, with this one, you're just holding it this way. So if I'm going across the top, I'm simply holding it this way. If I'm coming down vertically, I'm still holding it the same way. So I'm just moving the ruler to wherever I need it based on whether I'm using this side, or if you are left-handed, you would be holding it in your right hand, because remember, our dominant hand always goes on the handle of the machine, and you would be using the top and the side. So again, this is another version of ditch ruler, at least that Quilters Apothecary offers. And then we have the new relative to our products, and that is the Mystical Ditcher 5, 4, and 3. And these have these little notchers right here on each of the edge. Now, let me say this about these. Years ago, and I want to say this kindly because I think that a lot of people might utilize something like this a little bit differently. Early on, we had them and they were 1/4-inch tabs and they'd go right against the seam. Well, and then you have a 1/4-inch space here. In my opinion, when I bought those years and years, we're talking about 15 years ago, is when a lot of different people released that type of a ruler. What we didn't realize when we purchased all those is that it depends on which way your seam is pressed, whether or not that's going to work well, right? So that didn't work well for me. So what this is it actually, the tab extends out 1/2 inch, and then there's a 1/4 inch as well as a 1/8 of an inch mark, so that way you line up your marks right on the area that you want to ditch. And we're actually going to be doing a little bit of quilting with these different rulers in just a little bit, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And of course, we have the small size when you want something smaller. We have the medium, which is the Ditcher 4, which is the one that I use a lot and I'm starting to really fall in love with. And again, it's not that you push it against a seam, it's actually that you use the marks on it. And we'll get some close-ups of these so that you can see. And then, of course, we have the Ditcher 5, which is the larger, the 10-inch. So those are some of the tools of our trade. Also, let me add this. On our Mystical Square, which is the 4-inch, we also have added 3 sides are straight. So when you want to do some small, you got 3 sides to work with, ditch work. But then on one whole side, we have the notches. So this kind of also doubles as the mini left and right-handed. Um, and also we have a middle notch as well. That way when you're ditching around applique, you kind of get more bang for your buck with the small guy, which I really like. And especially for those, like I said, that can't keep turning the wrist, because with the mini, you still have to turn your wrist, and if you have any type of physical ailments that make that difficult, then this is the guy I'd go with, the 4-inch square, because then you don't have to turn your wrist to do a lot of this stuff. So, okay, that being said, let's head over to the machine, and we're going to do some ditch work on these beautiful piano keys. So I have my stitches locked. The first thing I'm going to do is to ditch up and over so that I can have my ditch work done between the body and border of the quilt, and then we will go into the piano keys at the top. So I'm going to start off doing a demo with the square ditcher, and I'm using the medium square ditcher, 6-inch, and we're going to line that up. And now when I get up to the top, I won't even have to turn my wrist. I can simply move the ruler. So as I go, and by the way, if you feel uncomfortable with any slide, if you're having a bad arthritis day or you have any physical issues, a little bit of spritz on the back of the ruler of the Ruler Magic or the Handy Grip tape, which we have on the website, is a wonderful addition. I don't like to use the sandpaper tabs because I think they scratch the surface of the fabric. So I'm going to line that up, and I've locked my stitches first. I look to make sure I'm about a 1/4 inch away. I have my machine on stitch regulator. Now, that being said, I will say this. When I had my first machine, my APQS Ultimate 1, 20 plus years ago, that did not have a stitch regulator on. They hadn't been out yet. So you can still, even without a stitch regulator, do ruler work. It's just you want to slow your machine down and take your time. One of the things that I find when people are doing ruler work is they think that ruler work needs to be done at the same speed that they would be doing a filler. And this is typically the speed that I would be doing any ditch work. And notice that I'm still shifting that ruler because I have yet to meet a straight seam in all of my years of quilting. So as I'm in there on that ditch, you can see that I am taking my time nice and slow to stay right in that ditch the best I can. And I also want to remind people, now do you see what I did there? I came away, but I'm not turning my wrist. I'm just going right in front just like that. And now I'm just going to work my way right across. I have invisible thread in the bob or in the top, never in the bobbin. And I use the Superior monopoly, and I'm going straight across. I'm using the smoke, and then that way, that is going to keep any mistakes that I make from being seen, just because simply I'm using the polyester-based invisible. I would not use the nylon invisible. Not a fan. And again, I'm using the square ditcher for this, and I'm working my way all the way across. Now, if you don't have any wrist issues, then you might want to go ahead and utilize the small ditcher or the ditcher 2. And same thing, you just line that up. It's just a little bit of a different hold on the ruler itself. Slide the ruler, pause, line it up, and work my way all the way down. If you want a little bit longer go, then again, you could switch to the ditcher 2. But the thing when you're using the ditcher 2 to remember, because it is a few inches longer, is that as you go, for example, as I ditch along, I'm going to also walk the ruler so my ruler is stable. The other thing that I want to remember with a ditch ruler, no matter what type of ditcher you're using, if whether it has a handle or not a handle, is you don't want to be tipping your ruler forward or back. If you tip your ruler down, then what's going to happen is this could go under the hopping foot of your machine. If you tip your ruler back, obviously this could go on top. And again, I always tend to pause my machine just out of safety whenever I'm going to move my ruler proper. So now I've ditched between the body and the border of the quilt. And now I'm going to ditch my piano keys. So what I'm going to do, there's a couple different options here. I could actually come down, go over in the ditch, up, over, so almost like a square zigzag. Up, over, down, up, down, over, up, over, down, up, over. So that's one way I could do it. And again, that's why I like to go ahead and do the ditch first here if I'm going to do that or not do that. I actually like to always do this ditch, either way. Now what I'm going to do instead, which I like to do, is I like to go down, up, over, down, up, over, down, up, over, down, up, over, down, up. So I'm going to do that. And again, I can use any of the rulers. I can use this ruler, but of course I want you to have a better visual. So I'm simply going to slide in the square, which will give you a little bit better visual. Line that up. Come down, up, travel my outer binding line, stop, slide my ruler, line it up, come down, and any shift in that straight line, I'm going to shift my ruler up, over, slide over, come down, up, over. And again, I could do the S kind of zigzag where I could come down, stop, turn, travel over, reline that up, come up. And again, I want to make sure to shift my ruler as I need to stay in that ditch. Now I'm pretty well versed at doing ditch work, but I also want to say I'm going pretty fast. Like a new person would definitely not be going that fast. They would probably be going this speed, taking their time, just like this, because you're just getting a feel. And the more you do this, the more use you're going to be to utilizing the rulers. So now, the next thing I would do is I'm going to do an example using this ruler. So now I have the Ditcher 4 because it's a little bit longer than the Ditcher 3. Of course, this has the tabs on it. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up, but I'm not going to go right to the line. I'm going to stay a little bit up. And so the 1/4 inch of the tab, I'm going to line up with the actual seam. I'm not real concerned about the upper tab. I'm more concerned about the lower one because the upper, I'm going to have to be shifting that anyways as I come down because again, there is no such thing as a straight seam. So I'm coming down, got that lined up. Now I'm going to go ahead, go back up, travel the binding line over, then I'm going to slide the ruler, put it in place, line that up again, and same thing, I'm going to come down, and I'm going to go all the way over, down, and up. Travel the binding line, shift my ruler, down, and up. And I'm going to travel that way all the way across the quilt. And again, let me show you as well. This is where this ruler can be handy as well. Travel my binding line, put my ruler in place, and then again, down and up. And that's going to give me a lovely piano key border all the way across. Get that little seam allowance in up there. Down and up. And if there's any curvature to the seam at all, using the invisible thread is going to hide that as we work our way all the way across the quilt. Okay, so there we have it. That hopefully helped clear up a few questions that many of you had on ditch work and the rulers to use. Remember, and I'm not saying this because I think you need to purchase every ruler out there, but I will say this. You are an artist and you need the right tools for the job. So this business that people have the opinion that you only need one ditch ruler, I think that's kind of silly. I think that depending on the job that you're doing, you want to have whatever tool you need to do them. We spend a lot of money on our equipment. We spend a lot of time on our dream, and we want to make sure to have the right tools for the job, no matter whose tools you like. Everybody that makes rulers out there have different multiple sizes and different shapes for ditch work. So again, let yourself be versatile, collect what you need to do the job that you need to do for you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we here at Quilters Apothecary will see you down the road. Make sure to hit the subscribe button because we're always trying to give you quality tutorials to make your creative life easier and more effective. Bye.